Hello everybody! JGC Anime here today. We're to review Mushoku Tensei Season 2 Part 2. So without further ado, let's just hop right into it. So, what is the story behind Mushoku Tensei Season 2 Part 2? Basically, now that Rudeus has gotten his life together, along with his wife Sophie, they're just going about living their lives until they get a message from Paul saying, oh yeah, I'm gonna go send your sisters over to you. Take care of them, would you? And after that, a bunch of stuff goes down with him and his sisters, as well as all of his other classmates and other fellow members of the school, as well as some other stuff he's setting up. And yeah, that's how the story starts before a big thing happens that I won't spoil, but that's all that really happens at the start of the story. So yeah, I think that wasn't a great way to describe it, but we're just gonna roll with it. So, in terms of spoiler-free thoughts for Mushoku Tensei Season 2 Part 2, I am very mixed at the beginning of this season, but the last few episodes are some of the best anime I have ever watched. Like, I'm not going to spoil it to the spoiler section, but dang, were those episodes just so freaking amazing. Like, hands down, some of the best anime I've watched, period. Like, I got so invested into each and every episode. The stories were so good. I had tears that I shed. There were so many moments where I was just so invested and cared so deeply about Rudeus' journey that it makes me just think, wow, Season 2 has just been a roller coaster of emotions. Like, it hits the same peaks as Season 1 does in a lot of areas, and I just genuinely enjoyed those last few episodes. As for everything before that, it's kind of a mixed bag. There were some episodes that I absolutely loved, every little piece of it, and there were some episodes I was just like, oh, okay. Wait, that was the whole episode? Well, dang, that could have been a lot better. But basically, overall, I still did very much enjoy this season. A lot of Rudeus' growth in this season really helps me appreciate the stuff he decides to do that ends up changing the course of his life in a way that you honestly can't fully expect unless you get spoiled about it, which there was one moment in this that was pretty big that I got spoiled on because, you know, it is what it is. There are lots of spoilers out there, and sometimes you're gonna get hit by one and it's disappointing, but still, the moment was still quite impactful, and I'll talk about it in the spoiler section. But basically, this show did such an amazing job of those last few episodes that even the earlier episodes, for as mixed as they were, where some episodes, as I said, were really good while others were kind of I still think that overall, Season 2 Part 2 has been such a fantastic addition to the Mushoku Tensei series. The fact that we've already gotten an announcement for Season 3 is amazing. I love that. I'm so happy we already got an announcement for Season 3 because, dude, this show, next to The Eminence's Shadow, is one of my favorite isekais of all time. Like, everyone else can have their slimes, which I still love that series a lot too, but considering Season 3's path right now, which I'm very mixed on, I don't love it or hate it, it's just kind of I'm not really loving slime as much as I used to, but moving past that, a bunch of other shows like Overlord and ReZero, shows that everyone else just absolutely freaking love, I'm either just thinking are fine enough or good, but I think I'd have to rewatch them in order to fully experience them again, like ReZero. Like, I haven't watched ReZero in a while, so I don't know if I would love it or not if I went back and revisited it. But basically, right now, Mushoku Tensei and The Eminence's Shadow are, for me, my top favorite isekais of all time. But moving past that, I am just astounded by how invested I have gotten into the Mushoku Tensei story. Like, I went into this not really sure what to expect. Like, I was fully into isekai. I've always loved isekai. It's one of my favorite genres of anime in general. In fact, one of the first few shows I watched was isekai. Granted, it was in another world with my smartphone, which nowadays I probably would despise if I went back and rewatched it, but that was an isekai, and we have a bunch of other shows that are isekais, and just isekais become a very important part of my life, as I just always really enjoyed them. So having Mushoku Tensei in there, I was really just unsure. I was worried that it would just end up being another isekai that I would kind of enjoy, since it's said that they're mainly just using a bunch of tropes that other people have taken and used to their advantage, but I am just so astounded that despite the fact it's where most of the tropes kind of came into existence for isekai, this show has continued to keep me super invested in the plot, Rudeus' character development, and everything else. It just astounds me how easy it is for me to get invested in Season 2, Part 2 of this show has just proven even more so that even when I feel like maybe it's starting to go a bit slower, it's not as entertaining as it could be, it then reels me back in. And then when all that stuff goes down and all these other crazy things happen, I just think, no way, no, what? Oh my goodness. And it makes me care for characters that I honestly didn't think I care about as much as I have. And it's just, it amazes me how well written each and every character in this show is. I just love it so much. I love all the different characters of the show. Sylphie during this season has been great. Even if she doesn't play as big of a role in this whole part, she has risen up to one of my favorite characters in the show. And there's so many other characters that I can't really talk about because those would be spoilers. But dude, there are so many amazing characters in this season. And this part in particular has just been amazing. Like, I am astounded that for all the mixed bags I felt while watching the first half of this season, and by this season I mean this half of the season, the first 6 or so episodes, I was very mixed. There were some episodes, as I said, I really freaking loved them, and other episodes where I'm just like, they're fine. But then when you get to those last 4 to 5 episodes, I just was blown away by how instantly invested I got in this anime, and seeing Rudeus in the state he is at the end of the season, I love this show so much, man. It was so freaking good, and I'm so happy that this show exists, because it is just amazing, and I'm so freaking happy with how it is going. I love this story, and I'm very curious to see what's going to happen in season 3, since it's amazing. I love this season so much, and this part in particular astounds me with how I think that these last 5 or so episodes of this season are some of the best anime I have ever watched. Like, I am just amazed at how freaking amazing they are. I loved it. I freaking love this season, and this part in particular, the ending of it delivers so hard that the mixed bag that was the beginning just is completely wiped off the board, and I just love this season so much, and it was so good. I loved it. And I'm sorry, that's not really a great kind of review of a bunch of parts of the season. I'm not really able to go into details without spoiling stuff, so I'm trying to not explain too much. But the way to best summarize this is, I just think it is phenomenal. I just loved it so freaking much. And man, it's so good. I love Mushoku Tensei. This show is just the best of the best. I love it so much, and I am so excited to see what season 3 has in store. And yeah, that's all I can really say without spoiling, since there is a lot I want to talk about in terms of spoilers, so we're just gonna hop into the spoiler section now. Here's the timestamps with the spoilers. If you have seen the show, I recommend sticking around and hear my thoughts, but if you have, just skip to the end so you don't get any spoilers. But again, if you have seen it, I recommend sticking around my thoughts. And yeah, I'm gonna count to 5, and we're going to enter the spoiler section. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so finally diving into spoilers. There were a lot of twists that I did not expect this season. One, I was spoiled on, which we'll get to that later. But some stuff I want to talk about is, I really love how much the relationship between Sylphie and Rudeus develops in the season. Like, we start the season out with him trying to help get a house, which is like a kind of haunted house, only not really. It's just that there's some kind of puppet monster thing that he has to take care of, along with the help of Cliff and Zonaba, and that's amazing. There's some other great stuff in there too, like how his sisters show up, and we also get to see Rougeard again, which it was a minute, so I'm very happy to see him, even if he was only in there for 1 episode, which was a bit disappointing, because I would have loved to have seen him throughout the course of the season. So him kind of vanishing after that was a bit disappointing, but it was still good to see Rougeard, as well as him trying to patch things up, since, as we know, Rudeus had thought that Eris had run away from him, only for Rougeard to be like, you know, maybe that wasn't the case. Maybe she actually had a reason for leaving. She probably didn't leave because of what you think she left for, which I'm very glad that Rougeard tried to clear that up with Rudy. And yeah, that was amazing. And I know that I'm not really trying to dive into any specific amount of passage here. Like, I'm not trying to explain things bit by bit and share my thoughts on the different things, because it'd be really difficult to pull that off with my thoughts kind of all over the place. But I just really enjoyed a lot about this season, because those episodes in particular were all really good, especially having to see Norn and Aisha, Rudeus' sisters, having their own little bickering stuff going on with how, you know, Aisha is fully on board with seeing Rudeus again. She's very happy to see him. And then Norn's just like, dude, no, this guy punched my father, and he was just terrible every single time I saw him. Even though my father hyped him up, I don't see what's so great about him. And it's just so interesting seeing how his sisters grow, especially Norn. Like, I'm very mixed on her episode where she locks herself in a room and Rudeus tries to figure out if she was being bullied or if she had her other reasons, which it was still a good episode. I'm not denying that. The episode was still very good, but it was a bit weaker in my opinion to some of the other episodes, because it just didn't feel like too much happened. But as I said, it's still a very good episode. I still very much enjoyed it. It flew by really quick. But I guess next thing I want to talk about, besides the sisters, because I think that their developments in the story, especially Norn's, were very good, is also the development of the character of Nanahoshi, who is a character that, as we know, traveled with Orsted during the first season, and her connection with Rudeus, with her learning that he's Japanese, just like her, which was interesting during the first half. But moving past that, her developments of this were interesting, but I think it was the weakest episode of this season, when she just couldn't figure it out, where during the whole process where she was trying to figure out how to make magic circles in order to teleport to other worlds so she can maybe get back to her own home, at the beginning of the episode, it actually starts off really good, with after another circle failing, she starts just thrashing everywhere. She feels like she's losing it because she just can't stand how little progress she is making. And that part was actually really good. I actually think it was a very good moment to help her growth as a character. And I really like how Rudius kind of tried to help her out and even got other people to come on board. But then it felt like the episode kind of dragged on with that for a bit as they try really hard to help her develop her circles. And it is interesting how they summon the plastic bottle, which was interesting. But overall, as an episode, I felt like it was the most time-wasted one. Like, it's not a bad episode, and I understand that as a development for Nanahoshi's character, it was absolutely necessary. I fully understand that. It's just, as an episode in total, I didn't like it that much. Just like the Norn episode where she finally learns to accept Rudius, I was very mixed on the episode, where I wouldn't say it's bad, but as an episode of the show, I found myself not enjoying it as much as I did a lot of the other episodes. So, yeah, that's something I kind of wanted to talk about, but it's whatever. It's just, Nanahoshi's episode was not the strongest. The beginning was very strong, but the rest of it was just kind of, it was fine. It didn't get me super interested in it or anything, but it is what it is. But moving past that, I guess we should talk about the actual big moment in the series. It's everything that happens after that school stuff at the start of the season. I really want to talk about it because some of it is so freaking amazing. Like, there are so many moments after Turning Point 3 that are just phenomenal. Now, is it perfect? No. There are moments where I was a bit iffy about it, but overall, I still very much loved how this all played out, and the last 3 or 4 episodes in particular were all incredible, and I think they're just some of my favorite anime ever, but we'll get to those in a little bit. First, I want to talk about how Turning Point 3 goes, since as we know, Rudius gets the letter for help from Geese, and after that, he talks with Nanahoshi, who gives him a book in order to use magic circles. Well, it tells him where the magic circles are, and he uses that while traveling with Elise. And basically those two just go out there and go try to see what's going on with Paul and also Geese and everyone else. And what I found interesting about that was how the man god thing decided, hey, I know that you want to go save your father, but yeah, no. I'm not going to let you do that. I'm just saying here now, instead of trying to go and save your father, you should instead stay here and try to form a harem. Just do that. Trust me. It'll lead towards great things in the future. And if you end up going, you are going to regret some things. And that was the first time Rudius has ever decided, no, I'm not going to listen to you. I'm going to go save my dad and my mom and everyone else. I'm going to go save them. And that was such an interesting story twist, since even though you knew it was probably going to happen at some point, it was still so interesting to see that this was the choice that really pushed it, since, as we know, Rudy is a character who, while understanding that those were his parents, he didn't have as strong of a connection with them as other people did. He even states as much in the story, where there are times where he just doesn't feel as connected with them as other people, like when they finally do find his mom, and while Paul is all freaking out like, dude, we gotta save her! Why aren't you freaking out more? Rudius is just like, dude, I understand, but please calm down. Please just calm down a little bit. We'll save her. Just give us some time to prepare. And the fact that that was the turning point really was nice, especially with how Norn decided she was going to go off and try to save their dad, since, you know, she wanted to make sure their family was okay. But then Rudius was like, no, I can't send you out there into that danger. I'll go. Fine. I'll go. And that was just such a good episode. And then after that, we have the journey with Elise and Rudius, which was fine. It was decent. I definitely feel like the whole journey was rushed through a bit too fast. In fact, I'm pretty sure in the light novels it was longer, but I haven't read the light novels, so I can't be sure. I just think that's what light novel readers have said. Maybe I'm wrong about that. If I am, I apologize, but it felt very short to me. I was a bit disappointed about how fast they got there. I definitely feel like there could have been a bit more of a kind of journey there, but it is what it is. But once we do get there, it is just amazingness from there on out. We get to see Paul really getting to team up with Rudy. We get to run into Roxy again. I'm so happy we ran into Roxy again. I've missed Roxy. It was great seeing her again. And Rudy is saving her like a true Chad, a true hero. He went out there and saved Roxy. And, you know, she immediately get a crush on him after that, because that's exactly how she wanted to meet her future lover, which was very funny, but it was also really great, even though it was kind of weird that after he reunited with her and she doesn't recognize him immediately, he pukes, which was a bit weird, but okay. But yeah, that whole stuff was really good. And then when we finally get to where the Hydra, like there's a Hydra that's blocking Zenith, you know, Rudius' mom in like a weird crystal thing. And basically we have to take down this Hydra in order to go and save her. And as I said, Paul was really freaked out about this. He literally just charges in, and it's just, the Hydra fight itself is so freaking amazing, and I loved it so much. And we'll get into more about that in a second, but I really do love how this, as I said before, shows how different of a connection Paul has to Zenith compared to how Rudy has to Zenith. Because Rudy only knew about her for a little while since, they eventually, around like 5 or so, shipped him off to go tutor Eris and stuff like that. And since that was the case, Rudy doesn't have as strong of a connection with her as Paul does because, as you know, Paul is Zenith's husband. So he has a stronger connection with her. So seeing her like that, of course, angers him. And it's just a great moment because it reminds you that, oh yeah, Rudius doesn't have as strong of a connection with her as Paul does. And that's incredibly interesting considering what happens later in the season. But moving past that, we have the actual Hydra fight, and it's freaking phenomenal. And I was spoiled on this, and that is Paul's death, where he sacrifices himself for Rudy. He literally just gets like chopped in half. And dude, I did not expect to cry. I was prepared for his death. I knew it was going to happen. I was ready. I was just not sure how I'd react to it. And then he dies. And rather than just being like, okay, or being like, oh, it's a bit sad, I could feel the tears falling. I could feel just the tears just coming down. Like, I was actually crying. I was sad. I was so upset. And it's so weird because Paul as a character has his ups and downs throughout the story. He's both been a good person in a lot of ways, but also a bad person in others. It's just so interesting that after all this time, his death affected me more than I thought it would. It affects Rudy as well, even more so in the next episode after that. But dude, that death was so emotional. Even though I knew it was coming, it still hurt. Like, I still felt so sad after the episode was over. And the fact that the episode came out on Father's Day, which I don't know if that was intentional or not, it probably was, but dude, that was just such a crazy episode. It was such an amazing episode. And after that, you then have Rudius suffering from the loss because now he's stuck in this hole where he basically just doesn't want to live anymore. But then Roxy comes in and is just like, hey, how about we do the deed and that should help. I know it's not what really happened. She helps him in a lot of ways and helps pull him out of that whole depression. But before she does that, one thing I found super interesting is in the last episode where Paul dies, we then have Rudius trying to confide in his mom because they managed to save Zenith. And you think, oh yeah, he found his mom. I wonder how things are gonna go. And then it's revealed she's basically like a vegetable right now. She is just there. She doesn't have much of anything going on in her mind right now. She's not in the state to be a living, breathing human being. And that almost breaks Rudius. Like, he legitimately is on the verge of breaking. And that's when, Roxy shows up and helps him out of that funk. And it's really nice. Even if it meant, ignoring the promise he made to Sylphie about not cheating. But we'll get to that in a little bit. But overall, I just think that those episodes were so good with each other. And then we get to the biggest moment in episode 11, where after everything that happened with Roxy, Rudius is just like, you know what? I'm gonna ask her to marry me. Just like that. Just have my second wife. And so he does. He asks her to marry him because she likes Rudius and he likes her. It's interesting because then that means they have to get permission from Sylphie and stuff like that. And overall, I just loved it so much with how the developments between Rudius and Roxy happened, because it started off as just teacher and student. It seemed like just a nice little thing between the teacher and the student, but all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, by the way, he wants to marry her now and she's kind of on board with it. And it's just so freaking amazing. I love it a lot. And I'm just really enjoying it. And then we get to the final episode, which hands down might be one of my favorite anime episodes of all freaking time. I loved it so much. When after they finally come home, they tell Rudius' sisters about it, about the, Paul's death. And it's just, you see Norn just breaking down and crying. And Aisha, while also sad about her dad, is really happy to see that her mom, who was traveling with them, is in fact alive, Lilith. And it's just such a good episode. And what's even better is how, while Norn is upset, she tries to almost pin the blame on Rudius, but then she sees that he lost his hand during that fight with the Hydra, and she's just like, oh, well, I guess he actually did try his best, because he wouldn't have lost a hand if he really wasn't trying that hard or something like that. I don't know if that was the exact thought process, but I can imagine her realizing that he actually did fight quite hard if he lost a hand from that. And I just love that so much. I really love how the developments turn out and how she ends up taking his sword while Zenith, in her almost comatose state, takes Paul's gloves. And it's a moment that, despite the fact of how painful it is to sit through, you want to see it happen. You want to understand how things are going to play out from now on, and it is so amazing. And then after that, we get to the real meat and potatoes of the episode, where Rudius decides to ask Sylphie if he can make Roxy his second wife. And it's interesting since first we get to see Norn, who is a follower of Millis, who doesn't really like marriage to more than one person, just get angry at Rudius because she hates the idea that he's being unfaithful, trying to have a second wife, and she just kind of digs into him, and Rudius tries to defend himself. He doesn't just take it and run with it. He actively tries to defend himself and how he feels. So when Norn starts to mock Roxy and stuff like that, he starts to try to stand up and be like, hey, wait a minute. And eventually just leads to Roxy trying to leave because she thinks that she's just not welcome there. She starts to walk out before Sylvie's like, nah, wait a minute. You helped Rudy in a bad state, and for that, I'm pretty grateful. And the fact that it is clear that you actually do love him, I think I'm willing to let it slide. And you know what? Why not? Go ahead, become a second wife. So she made it clear earlier in the season that she's very fine with having more wives for Rudius. It's just something she understands. Rudius is a very active guy, and it's just the fact of the matter is that he wants to have Roxy as his second wife, and she's just like, you know what, yeah, sure, if it makes Rudius happy, then that's fine. And the fact of the matter is she's still having a baby. Like, I don't think I mentioned this up to this point, but at this point Sylvie is pregnant now with Rudius's kid, and the fact that she's willing to accept Roxy is just so amazing, and I'm just so happy with how that turned out. And then we cut a bit further into the future where Norn's trying to fight Rudius, and Roxy reveals like, oh yeah, I'm gonna wait till you have your child with Rudius before trying to actually get married and stuff like that. And also, after that, you have the actual skip to when the actual having a child happens. And dude, I am so happy to see Rudius and Sylvie have their child. It's very nice. I'm very happy for them. And I'm just excited to see what the story has in store now that they have a kid. And Rudius has 2 wives and his sister's living there too. It's just so interesting. And it makes me very curious to see what's going to happen with Eris, since she might appear in the 3rd season. She might not. I don't know. She didn't really appear in the season besides at the very end in like a small 2-second shot. So it's really hard to say exactly what's going to happen with her in the future. I don't know if she's going to be in season 3 or not. I hope she kind of is because I want to see what her reaction to all of this is. But at the end of the day, I don't know. That's just something we're going to have to see in the future. But yeah, I very much enjoyed that. And then we, at the very end, cut to Rudius appearing in front of Paul's grave and talking with him and stuff like that, and admitting a very important lesson that not everyone realizes, and that is that you don't just become a man just on its own. You don't just grow into the role of being a man. Becoming a man is something you have to kind of just do. There is no moment where you realize, oh, I should be a man now. It's a, oh, I have to do it now. There's no other option. I have to take control of this. And it shows just how much Rudius has grown compared to the start of the season, as well as just the start of this whole anime, and how he's finally learned just what it means to become a man and improve himself as a person. And I've just loved how much Rudius's growth has occurred over the course of just these last 5 or so episodes, and it makes me very curious to see what awaits Rudius in season 3, since I'm so excited to see where things go with that. And yeah, I very much enjoyed this season, and I'm so excited for season 3. I just really want to see what happens next, since this anime is amazing, and I just can't go over how incredible this season truly is without just saying that it's great. It is beautiful. It is amazing. It is one of the best stories I think I've ever watched in anime form. And yeah, that's all I have to say. So we're at the conclusion of this video. What are my final thoughts? Overall, I very much enjoyed this. I had such an amazing time watching so much of this season. And while I, as I said before, don't think that the beginning is the strongest thing ever, there are good episodes and there are mediocre ones. There was never a moment where I felt like this show was bad. There was never an episode where I thought, ugh, this is getting boring. That never occurred to me. That thought never passed my mind. And while it could have been better in a few ways, I still think it is an incredible season, and I loved so much of it because it is just such a fantastic anime. It is just so good, and I'm very excited to see what season 3 has in store, since this show is just fantastic. And yeah, overall, I give Mushoku Tensei Season 2 Part 2 a 9 out of 10. It's practically perfect. It is good in so many ways, and I am so excited to see what it has in store for the 3rd season. And yeah, that's all I have to say, and thank you all for watching. If you're new to the JGC Anime channel, don't forget to subscribe. I also do Anime Fans to the channel, and I will see you all around. Peace!